So today, the New York Times reported that attorneys for Donald Trump and the Trump Organization and Donald Trump's chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, met with attorneys from the district attorney's office in Manhattan to ask them not to press charges against the Trump Organization. So it appears that the Manhattan DA is actually going to move forward with charges against Donald Trump's organization and some of his employees. Hooray, right? Well, let's talk about that in this video. I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. If you share my concerns, then maybe you could like this video and subscribe to this channel and maybe even click that little bell that will notify you when I post something new. So progressives like us have long been clamoring for prosecution to begin against Donald Trump for his widespread illegality that occurred during his administration. It appears that finally the district attorney's office in Manhattan is moving forward with something in that regard. Now, it's important to note, though, that these charges that are being sought by the district attorney's office have nothing to do with Donald Trump's time as president. They have to do with his shady business dealings, where, in effect, he and his organization had lied about the value of properties that they had while they were trying to apply for loans from different banks. Now, this is not some small issue. This is fraud, and it's resulted in a number of people going and serving serious prison sentences. So you might think that this is what's in store for Donald Trump based upon this latest news. Unfortunately, despite the fact that you might think the Trump Organization and Donald Trump are one, they are not. And so what's going to happen is the DA's office appears to be pursuing charges against the Trump Organization, not Donald Trump, not any individual. So what they appear to be doing, according to the New York Times, is trying to create pressure to find people who are going to testify against Donald Trump about his business dealings. So apparently that's the reason that they're going to indict the Trump Organization. By indicting the Trump Organization, they will be able to flip the Trump Organization to then testify against Donald Trump. But this is something like how it will go. The Trump Organization will be seated in the witness chair, and the attorney from the district attorney's office will start questioning the Trump Organization, and the Trump Organization's response will be this. Yes, that's right, it will be nothing, because the Trump Organization is a legal fiction. It does not exist except on paper and in the courts. This idea of legal fictions is something that's quite unique to American law, and we've really taken it to an extreme over the past few years by even granting legal fictions such as corporations, things like religious rights, First Amendment rights, and other freedoms that generally are reserved for actual people like you and me. But under the law, corporations are persons, the same way you and I are. In fact, when I teach classes on business law, I'll have my students read a portion of the text from the decision in the Hobby Lobby case. Now, most people think about the Hobby Lobby case as being one about corporations being granted certain religious freedoms that generally are reserved for individuals. And you'd be right. But when you read the text of the decision, really what the decision is all about is that corporations are persons under the law, and so must be treated as such. This idea of corporations having the same rights as individuals is also the basis for the Citizens United case, which really has resulted in widespread condemnation. But hey, if corporations are people, they get rights too, according to the law. Now, the irony is that the basis for this American legal philosophy is simply a head note, just one of those little summaries of a case from the Supreme Court from 1886, and the case is Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. And that head note basically said that the 14th Amendment, which deals with people's individual liberties and the protections that the Constitution provide them, also apply to corporations because they're people. Now, the reason this is ironic is that this head note was not written by any of the Supreme Court justices. It wasn't even written by a clerk. It was written by some analyst who was looking at the case and trying to explain it in simple terms for everybody else to read quickly. And yet, despite the fact that this is nothing more than basically a clerical error, this idea of corporate personhood has become a central tenet in American law since 1886. So as a result of this idea of corporate personhood, not only can corporations own property and sue and be sued, but they can also be charged with crimes, and sometimes they are. But that then leads to a problem. Who do you put in jail? The corporate entity is separate from both its owners and its managers and its employees. So if the corporate entity is found guilty of violating a crime, you can't put the corporation's owners in jail. You can't put the corporation's managers in jail. You can't even put the corporation's employees in jail. You have to separately prove that those individuals were guilty of violating the crime. Well, in the case being brought by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, it appears that they are not charging any other employees other than Alan Weisselberg, who certainly is a key individual. But beyond that, I don't entirely understand the point of prosecuting the Trump organization itself. Let's just say that the Trump organization is found guilty. Well, what can be done to it? Well, it could be fined, and certainly there could be fines that were paid. But my guess, and I'd be willing to bet this, is that the Trump organization is so heavily indebted and that all its assets are what are called secured, which means that there are like mortgages on them. So as a result of that, the Trump organization actually doesn't even have money to pay the debts, even if it wanted to. This is more evidence of what many of us have been saying all along, which is that Donald Trump isn't nearly as rich as he's always claimed to be. So the point is, even if they do prosecute the Trump organization, there's not a whole lot they can do to it to force them to do anything with respect to Donald Trump. If their goal is to get Alan Weisselberg to testify against Donald Trump, then they should just be prosecuting Alan Weisselberg, and anything else is nothing more than a PR maneuver. Now, the bigger issue with this prosecution is the fact that nobody is being held accountable for what they did while in office. The Trump administration was nothing more than a criminal enterprise, which was replete with self-dealing and with unlawful behavior and with refusing to cooperate with authorities. Obstruction of justice was central to this administration, much as the Mueller report pointed out, by the way. And yet, what charges are being pursued against Donald Trump and his associates? Well, we have the Manhattan District Attorney looking at the finances of the Trump organization before Donald Trump was in office, and we have what appears to be an investigation going on in Georgia for Donald Trump's efforts to try to overturn the election there. But with regard to the widespread illegality in the Trump White House, our superstar Attorney General Merrick Garland has said he's not going to investigate that there's nothing to investigate there. And if that's the case, it makes you wonder what a president must do to be prosecuted. You see, my bigger concern here is not so much with some type of justice against Donald Trump, which certainly would be nice. My bigger concern is that we need to create some kind of disincentive for future administrations to behave the way they did. We need to let potential future presidential candidates know that if they're going to behave in the kind of widespread illegality and obstruction of justice and self-dealing that the Trump administration behaved in, that they will be held to account for it. And if that fear isn't created, then there's going to be nothing that stops future administrations from behaving in the exact same way. So I'm calling on Attorney General Merrick Garland, and I hope other progressives will join me in making this call, to step forward and start investigating the Trump administration itself. Investigations by the bureaucrats in the Inspector General's offices are not enough. The Department of Justice needs to move forward with an investigation and potential prosecutions. The reality is, protecting American democracy demands that. So if you agree with me or disagree with me, I'd love to hear your comments below. In the meantime, if you could like this video, subscribe to this channel, and maybe even click that little bell that will notify you when I post something new. I will see you in the next video, and let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.